Reconvene the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors into session. We are continuing a meeting that started on Monday, April 19th, which was where we heard public testimony for more than 400 emails, more than 150 oral comments on a cannabis cultivation ordinance. We continued the meeting to yesterday, Tuesday, the 27th of April, with the public hearing having been closed, deliberations continuing, and after about 19 hours of total meeting time so far, we approved or gave further direction on the cultivation ordinance. Now we're moving into item 3A of the same meeting, which is the Cannabis Facilities ordinance, and I'm looking to county planning staff. I believe this is also a public hearing, and so perhaps county planning staff would like to introduce the item.
Sure, thank you, Chair Jurdy. Good morning, supervisors. This is Sam Vandy Vandewater, interim senior planner with the planning department. So I'm going to present our facility ordinance amendment, and I'll go through the memorandum while also sharing the screen so that I can actually show you the changes that I'm referring to in the memo. So I'm going to do that real quick. That's this one. Okay. So just a little background to this ordinance amendment. The original Cannabis Facilities ordinance was adopted on October 17th of 2017. And there have already been some small revisions to the ordinance in March of 2018, but this was mostly to align the activities with the Williamson Act policies and procedures. Beginning in August of 2018, a non-cultivation working group was formed by the board to kind of review the Cannabis Facilities ordinance and look for ways to bring it more into state compliance and just provide additional amendments as recommended by the working group. And with that, the staff presented those recommendations to the board in September of 2019, to which the board agreed to 7 out of 17 of the recommendations. And so this ordinance really includes those 7 directions provided to staff.
And Vindy, if I could just interrupt just for a second. I want to go to the clerk, and I just want to confirm that we've established the proper notice was given for today's public hearing.
Yes, proper notice has been established.
Okay, and we are opening up the public hearing at 9:03, and you can continue on, Vandy.
Thank you. So looking at this first section, this is the Cannabis Facilities Businesses section, which is in Title 6 of the Mendocino County Code, which is what the tax collector is regulating. And we really didn't make too many changes here. What we do have is the removal of the term church from our sensitive receptor setback language. And this is to align with state regulations, which currently do not require churches be set back for cannabis businesses. And we also just cleaned up the language a little bit because we brought definitions from 10A17 into the facilities ordinance so that we didn't have to refer back to 10A17 and 20.242. And again, this more cleanup of the chapter 6.36 language by removing state licensing language, which is now available. Additionally, within the tax collector section, we wanted to be able to deny applications in which the applicant has not had communications with the department for more than a year. This is a little bit of an issue we have with facilities where people will apply and we send correction letters and I haven't heard responses from some people since 2017. So we have several tens of applications sitting around with no applicants responding to us at this time. And last section to repeal be amended in Title VI is the section 6.36.150, which was referring to temporary cannabis facility business licenses, and the state no longer provides these. So this language is considered redundant and no longer necessary for our code, so it is being repealed. Let me close that. So moving forward, we're going into Title 20, which is the zoning code, specifically section or chapter 243, which is the Cannabis Facilities section. So the first section that we've amended is the definitions, which is largely bringing many of the definitions into state language. Adjacent parcel is one that we've just added because we use the term adjacent parcel throughout the ordinance, and we just wanted to provide clarification as to what adjacent parcel meant. We have the term cannabinoid and photocannabinoid we've removed because the state does not actually have a definition for this within the cannabis facilities regulations. Some of this is currently existing definitions that we've cleaned up a little bit about. If there's any specific definitions, just let me know that you have questions about. I'm just going to kind of skim through this real quick. We've added a few, such as event, cannabis farms, cannabis farmers markets, farm tours, farm tour operators, lodging, more cleanup. Cannabis waste is a definition that we've added from state regulation. These terms as well, infused pre-roll, keef, and manufacture. We've also taken from state regulation language. This section right here regarding micro businesses, this was at the request of Commissioner Jones from the Planning Commission to provide clarification for the home occupation and cottage industry language. These regulations have been in place since the inception of the Cannabis Facilities Ordinance, but Commissioner Jones felt it would be appropriate to provide clarification up front in the definition, just so that people are aware of what the requirements might be. Solvent we've brought into state regulation. Park we've further defined, and we currently actually already have a list maintained in the department for facilities, at least for what is considered a park. Pre-roll processing and school, I believe, are now following state definitions. Shared use facility, which I will discuss a little later, is also it's a state provided facility type for manufacturing, and that's been included as a definition. And then lastly, we have we've added what volatile solvents are, and as well as bringing the youth oriented facility back into state compliant language. Then moving forward into use types, this section covers the various use types or the cannabis facilities that we provide business licenses for. So each section is really referring to a different facility type. With regards to processing, we really just wanted to clean up this language and add what is currently done in the department for processing. So for example, if you have two parcels that are being cultivated set by the same cultivator, they can move the product in between the two parcels for processing. Whereas in alignment with state language, if, for example, the two farms were not contiguously adjacent parcels, then the state does require that people get a distribution license to bring product from one parcel to the other. So we just want to align this language with the state, how it works and the process. For manufacturing, we got rid of references to 10A17. We additionally have included a shared use facility, which would allow manufacturers to occupy a shared space for either one day of the week or for a week-long period. It really depends on how the facility wants to operate their space. But each applicant will be required to get a business license to do their manufacturing in the space. Testing, we did not amend or change any language to. The retail language, we just provided clarification by, at the state, it's really just a retailer, and there's two different types. There is retailer, dispensary, and non-storefront retailer. So this section really just provides that clarification to the two different types of license that people can apply for. And a lot of this language is just cleanup and is already existing. This item 7 is notwithstanding. So we have a number of things, a number of retail activities that can be done in association with a cannabis cultivation site. So for example, we allow with a non-storefront retailer, cultivators can obtain that license to do retail deliveries, sales at cannabis farm tours, cannabis lodging, or even going to events. This also allows them to do cannabis farm tours, and the Planning Commission provided staff with 2 separate kind of ways to look at farm tours. And so what we have here for B is that farm tours on parcels with frontage on a publicly maintained road may have up to 3 tours of no more than 25 people per week. After that threshold, a minor use permit that would be reviewed by the Planning Commission would be required. For parcels that do not have frontage on a publicly maintained road, staff decided to go with Commissioner Pollin's recommended language, which would allow 1 tour per week of no more than 25 as accessory. And anything exceeding this would also require the minor use permit that would be reviewed by the Planning Commission. And lastly, we've included the retail dispensary license for locations that have cultivation sites, and it's subject to a minor use permit also under the Planning Commission's purview. So this would allow a person to, operate an actual dispensary on their cultivation site where anyone, regardless as if they're part of a farm tour, if they're lodging, for whatever reason, they can go and purchase cannabis or cannabis products at this dispensary on the farm tour. Or on at the cultivation site. So we've also included cannabis farmers markets. Cannabis farmers markets would allow for retail it's pretty much a farmer's market that's with cannabis. And just to address some of the comment letters that we've received regarding this, there have been mention of several communities not having space to do farmers markets. And we're requesting to be able to do so in public spaces. And this is not an issue. I've contacted the Department of Transportation, Amber Facette, and she noted that they would treat any cannabis farmers market like any other activity that's requesting to close down a street temporarily for use. But I think any other conversation past that should be had with DOT. But with that said, there is a state regulation that requires that events such as this, such as a cannabis farmers market, cannot be seen from the public. So just be, if the board is interested in allowing cannabis farmers markets on public streets, just be advised that fencing would be required around the entire event, and that fencing would need to be screened so that no one walking on the sidewalk could look into the farmers market. And that's a state requirement. And just to return back, we have cannabis farm tours. And as mentioned, there's the different allotment based on publicly maintained road frontage. And just a few additional caveats is that cannabis farm tours will need to operate with a non-storefront retail, and if it's the operator doing the tours, then they will need to obtain a regular business license for doing business within the county. And just to prohibit, the Planning Commission wanted to prohibit farm tours in residential areas, so they have prohibited them in any rural residential district or the suburban residential zoning district. The last section of the second to last, I believe, of the retail is cannabis lodging, which would allow people to have either hotels or Airbnbs, bed and breakfast, and allow the provision of cannabis during that lodging period. Moving down to distribution facilities, this language was just cleaned up to better align with the state to show how county licenses align with state licenses, because the County of Mendocino does do our distribution differently. We do provide cultivators with the opportunity to do self-distribution at a bit bigger of a scale than what is provided for at the state level self-distribution. And I'm happy to go over this section in more detail later if there are any questions about it. But again, this is just aligning state licenses with local practices. And we have just two notwithstanding clauses, and these have just been removed from a different section into here just to provide better clarification. And lastly, we have the micro business, which again is removing reference to 10A17 and including the home occupation and cottage industry clarification language. Moving down to general limitations, which is section 6 of the ordinance amendment, we have just this language. This is aligning it back with the chapter 6.36 for the setback language for sensitive receptors. And we've also removed cargo container because the state does not prohibit the use of cargo containers for certain cannabis facility activities. So we just want to align that with the state as well. So just to move down to this table, which is an important table for everyone. Maybe I should zoom out a little. No, too much. So this is the table that we typically refer to when we're approving or reviewing cannabis facilities business licenses. This does not include all the notwithstanding clauses in the previous section. But so the major changes to this include reference to all those, sorry, I keep doing that. Includes the references to all the exceptions for the various use types. In terms of expanding the table, we have decided to allow non-volatile manufacturing in the C1 zoning district, the limited commercial. And this is tied to an analogous use of custom manufacturing, which also requires a major use permit. And then within the distribution category, we've decided to expand that into ag, rangeland, and forest land. And for the analogous use, we've tied that to packaging and processing winery, because there are several winery facilities in the county that operate large, distribution centers to sell their product. And while those are permitted uses in those 3 zoning districts, we felt just for the purpose of keeping this ordinance under an exemption under CEQA, we decided to make sure that those were major use permits for that expansion into those districts. And we're almost done. This last section, again, is clean up and detached from 10A17, and including the language about idle applications where people don't respond back to us for a period of more than a year. And lastly, we'll be adding cannabis events. And this language it mostly ties it back to our current special events language found in chapter 20.168.020. However, that section does not require events of less than 100 to be regulated. And for state purposes, we do need to regulate cannabis events. So cannabis events of under 1,000 would require an administrative permit, while cannabis events of over 1,000 would require a minor use permit. And again, this is going back to existing language in the Mendocino County Code. And just as a side note, there will be an ordinance amendment for special events coming down in the next few months, later this year, to kind of bring that into a better alignment with current county practices. And this permit revocation was just moved from the previous section that is now cannabis events. And with that, staff is available for any questions that the board might have. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Williams.
Could we scroll to 040?
Sure, let me just get back to that. You said 040 or?
Yeah, 040 under D7B.
D7B. Okay.
This is a section you read to us about when a minor use permit is required.
Correct.
I'd like to propose, it may be appropriate in some cases, subject to Planning Commission review, that 2 tours per week have 26 people per tour. And that rather than locking in with this particular formula, maybe we could, for more than 3 tours per week, insert or more than 25 people per tour. And leave it up to the discretionary process, because it may be that fewer total visitors could fit with a different scheduling.
Just to clarify, you would be seeking to have it so that it's either 3 tours per week or more
than 25 people per tour.
So that would mean that the 3 tours have to be under 25 people total? That's how
No, I think the existing language limits tours to 25 persons. I'm suggesting if they're, and no more than 3 times per week. So I'm suggesting that if it's more than 3 times per week, or if any one tour is more than 25 people, a minor use permit should be required.
Okay, thank you. This is not just so you're aware, this is a PDF, so I'll be making my changes on my notes here. But I did have.
Otherwise, I think this proposal strikes a good balance. Thanks for the effort.
I have a question for Vandy on the bus size. Did the Planning Commission discuss when they say 25 persons, are they thinking of a bus of a certain size? I'm just kind of curious where that comes from. I know the full-size bus would hold up to about 50 people, and but the buses that we might see more commonly, at least on the coast, don't hold 50 people. So just wondering where the 25 persons comes from. Is it kind of targeting a certain size bus that would be traveling on the road?
Sure. So Vandy, interim senior planner. The whole conversation around cannabis farm tours, it kind of had various ideas in terms of threshold. So at one point it was certain number of vehicles could be visiting the site. Maybe it was 1 bus. So the Planning Commission really just concluded that they didn't want more than 25 people. They didn't really tie it back to number of vehicles. So I guess, there could be buses that carry the 25 people, or alternatively, it could actually be 25 individual vehicles going per tour. They never decided on a vehicle limit, just a person limit.
Okay, Supervisor Hashak.
Thank you, Chair Jurdy. On letter C, that what I see is a recommended language that was approved by 3 of the planning commissioners. Is different than this, and this is the part that you went with Commissioner Powell's recommendation. And I was just wondering why were for other language.
Sure. So Vandy, interim senior planner. What staff had previously recommended initially was that every single cultivation site should be permitted 1 tour per week, with anything exceeding that requiring a permit. And it was the Planning Commission that really brought it into determining the frontage on a publicly maintained road. And staff felt that Commissioner Pollin's approach was appropriate, again, because of our initial language, but also, so we allow wineries within rangeland zoning districts as well as forest land as a permitted use. And along with that comes tasting rooms. So you could have a winery on a private road, several parcels back from a public road with a tasting room, and there's absolutely no discretion or review of that. It's a permitted use. So staff felt that cannabis farm tours should be at least allotted one tour without having, a review of that activity, just to, provide a bit more leeway and similarity to the wineries.
So I have a follow-up question that earlier you said that 25 persons could be 25 vehicles. How are 25 vehicles, one person per vehicle, how's that a tour?
So the tour doesn't necessarily begin off-site. It can begin on-site. So if the tour starts at the cultivation site, people would need to commute to the cultivation site, park there, and then they receive the tour, which could be, of the cannabis product, it could be of the facilities that they're in, or it could be of the product that they're growing. So the tour is really dependent on, I guess, where it starts. If it's a third-party provider, then I guess they would be parking elsewhere and being driven up by that third-party provider.
So I'm just trying to understand this. So if the county's defining a tour as up to 25 vehicles, then let's say the entity puts in parking for more than 25 vehicles, and neighbor complains, code enforcement investigates, there are 25 guests parked there, and the county is told, well, the tour started at 1 and it's now 3 o'clock. These people are all on a tour, but how would the county know that the tour started at 1 and ended at 2 and there's just new people showing up?
This is Julia Krog, Assistant Director, and I think that's a good question. So as Vandy was indicating in his presentation, staff had originally proposed that it would just be one tour per week. So that way there would be really a limited potential impact. It would be easier for us to be able to determine when there may be a potential violation of that. But otherwise, this is really going to be subject to review and investigation through a code enforcement process if we receive a complaint such as that.
I'm just curious how the county is even going to enforce this. Supervisor Williams?
Do we require that the host maintain a log so that if there is a complaint, we can just look at the log and see how many guests and the scheduled time?
Vandy, interim senior planner, no, at this time, the regulations would not require that they keep a log and provide that log to the staff.
And this is Julia Krog, but certainly the board could direct that be required as part of this. And that could be something then that way we can refer back to if there is a complaint filed regarding a particular cannabis tour.
Supervisor Hatchak.
Thank you, Chair Jordy. Yeah, it doesn't seem like, relying on complaint-driven approach is the right way to do it. We're trying to get away from that on what we're doing. And so how can we be more protective of the people who live on these roads is the question. And if it's keeping a log and making sure that we can check that log or something, it just seems like the more we rely on complaint-driven process, the more problems we have. But I would like to talk about the farmers markets too. And with the farmers market, you said that it could be in a public place that was enclosed with a barrier and secure so people can't see in. The problem is that in some of these places like Cobolo, there aren't really, private places that would be appropriate for this. And so, what if we did it so, you had that barrier that you couldn't see in. You could block off a street or so, and the farm or the fire department and the MAC could approve such a configuration. Would that be an appropriate way to deal with it?
Vandy, interim senior planner, that is something certainly the board can direct us to include in the ordinance. I don't see any issue with that. And again, as I mentioned, I already reached out to DOT to see if they had any concerns with cannabis farmers markets on public streets, and they just said they would treat it like any other public event that was on the street.
Right, because we do have alcohol on streets like that for like the Blackberry Festival and things like that. So I think if it's treated in the appropriate way under the state guidelines, then we'd be good. And if the MAC approved it and fire department, I think that's an appropriate way to go forward.
And I may want to look to council on this a little bit. This is Julia Krog, but just on the point discussing the Municipal Advisory Council, municipal advisory councils are typically advisory bodies. So there might need to be some discussion about whether or not that's within their authority to have that type of approval or denial authority.
Okay.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, through the chair to that specific point, I believe that is correct. They're advisory to the board on certain things, not necessarily an approval body for any of their areas.
Okay, Supervisor Mulhern, I want to apologize that the way I had my screen cropped, I didn't see your hand raised, so go ahead.
Okay, it seemed like we were in the middle of a discussion. I'm thankful that staff had a presentation today. I think that most of my questions have been answered, especially around why churches was removed, and that was to align with the state. Similarly, that cannabis farmers markets would be allowed, but that there would have to be visual barrier, which is also aligned with the state. So those are great things. I had 3 other questions, and I don't know if you want to take them one at a time or if I should just ask them all at once. One of them is, why are we limiting the number of users at a facility to no more than 5 separate users at a shared facility? Is that a state requirement, or is there a reason why we chose 5?
Vandy, interim senior planner. So a shared use facility can only be occupied by a user one at a time. And with 7 days out of a week, the maximum would really be 7. And I just used 5 because Monday to Friday is a normal business week. We can change it, we can up it or lower it, but we do have to keep it so that only one user is allowed to use the space at a time.
It seems like everybody might have a bit of a different business model, and I'm not sure why we're calling out a specific number instead of saying user at a time. That makes it, I think that what's happening in the public is that makes it seem like, for instance, a business couldn't have contracts with more than 5 users. And so I just think it's a little bit unclear as to what the goal is, to just not have more than 1 at a time. I think that in the way that the letters have come in.
So this is Julia Krog, Planning and Building. So certainly the board could give us direction if they wish to see that number of shared users be increased, or more in line with allowing folks to establish their own sort of business model related to that. That's certainly direction that can be received on the ordinance today, and staff can incorporate that change.
I would
Thank you,
support
guys.
removing the limitation.
Thank you for that. I think it makes sense to not, to let businesses figure out how many users they need to make their facility pencil, but I understand not having more than 1 at a time. So changing that language makes sense to me. And I don't know if the chair wants to have a straw poll before I move on to my next question, or if I should ask my next question.
Well, go ahead. So what do others think?
I support it, the change.
Yeah, it would be fine with me.
Okay.
Good catch.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank Thank you. My next question was also about limiting employees on micro businesses. So I think that this is another one where we seem to be, micromanaging the business options that people have. And I just wasn't sure if this, again, is something required by the state, or we are concerned about parking, or where that came from.
Sure. So again, Vandy, interim senior planner. So the way that we are getting this ordinance to be considered exempt from a CEQA review is by tying all these proposed changes to analogous uses. And I will say that the micro business being tied to home occ and cottage industry has been that way since the ordinance was originally adopted. And that's so that, because we're using analogous uses, we are looking at, for example, if someone wanted to do a micro business in a rangeland parcel, we had to determine how many of the currently allowed uses in rangeland the micro business aligns with. And so when we did that, the least restrictive came out to the home occ and the cottage industry. And so those two different regulations are already defined in our county code. And so we would need to do an environmental review to go beyond what the home occupation and the cottage industry currently incorporates, because it's more than anything that's currently permitted in most of those districts.
Okay, thank you. So it's to align with the business types, and I can understand that. My last question is on table 1, and that's for why did we not include commercial, so C1 and C2 in the distributor column?
Sure, Vandy, interim senior planner. Going back to the analogous use conversation. So what we consider distribution at the full, what is on this table is considered wholesaling, distribution, and packaging under our county code. And so the county code does not allow wholesaling within the C1 zoning district with any, either as a permitted use or as a conditional use. And in reviewing, during this ordinance amendment, in reviewing possible expansions of certain types, we just could not find a single analogous use within the C1 zoning district to expand distribution there.
Thank you for answering my questions.
Okay, Supervisor McGordy.
So, Vandy, I think you kind of answered this, but I just wanted to revisit the micro business category again. So I was informed by someone who's very interested in this that the state allows up to 10,000 square feet. And what's our cap? 2,000?
No, so the state's language currently, the way a micro business works is that you need to have 3 out of 4 activities. And those 4 activities are cultivation of no more than 10,000 square feet, distribution, retail, and non-volatile manufacturing. So we still allow the 10,000 square feet of cultivation, but in terms of tying it to our home occupation and our cottage industry, we are limiting the amount of space that can be dedicated to the distribution, retail, and or manufacturing, depending on what the applicants choose. So for a home occupation, which would only require that the applicant obtain a business license, they, in addition to their 10,000 square feet, must do their other 3 activities within a 640 square foot space. And if they're allowed 1 employee through that home occupation. And so if they feel they need to exceed that, that's where it goes into cottage industry. The cottage industry, in addition to the business license, requires that an applicant get a minor use permit. And the limitations of cottage industry are no more than 3 employees and no more than 2,000 square feet of space dedicated to the non-cultivation portions of the micro business. And again, just to go back, this is so that to tie the micro business to analogous uses so that we could permit it within all the zonings in which cultivation sites are allowed.
Thank you for the clarification. That seems reasonable.
Do we have other questions? Supervisor Hashak?
So going back to the farmer's market issue, so if the MAC isn't going to be the decider, they're just going to advise, then how do we get it so that some of these smaller communities can have it in a public setting where there is, fenced off, non-visible, secure approaches to it? So what would be the sign off and approval for that?
So Vandy, interim senior planner. So the way that, at least for discretionary projects, the way the MACs are utilized is that we refer the projects to them for commenting. And that would be the same for these events, because the event will either require an administrative permit or a minor use permit. But as Assistant Director Krog had noted, the MACs are really not agencies that provide approval or denial authority. They will certainly get to review the project, and their comments will be taken into consideration, but they wouldn't be the bodies that either approve or deny these events. It would be the Planning and Building Services. I'm not sure if that's addressing your question.
Yeah, it is totally. I guess the question is if if we could see if there's approval from the board to go ahead with that approach of letting it in some public areas that where there's secure, there's this fencing, non-visible fencing and security.
Yeah, if that's something the board would like to see, I would just need direction, and I could certainly make that change.
Okay, so I would move that.
Okay, Supervisor Mulhern and Supervisor McGorty, your hand is raised on the computer.
I was raising my hand for it's fine. It's fine with me. It sounded like there was already a process that allows it. But if staff needs more clear direction, then go right ahead.
Yes, so I would I do still need direction from at least 3 supervisors to remove the street limitation from cannabis farmers markets.
I can support it.
Okay, sounds like 3. Supervisor Williams, did you raise your hand?
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other questions of staff? Okay, not seeing any. We're going to go to public comment. Again, the public hearing's been open since 9:03. Atlas, if you can bring in public comment.
First on the line will be Michael Katz, followed by Ron Edwards and Corrine Powell.
Good morning, supervisors. My name is Michael Katz, the Executive Director of the Mendocino Cannabis Alliance. I want to thank you for continuing this meeting and continuing to speak about these important items. MCA appreciates the intent of the Planning Commission's recommendations offered to facilities ordinance amendments in order to both streamline the process and provide more opportunities to the cannabis industry. Some of the Commission's recommendations could use a little additional support, and we would like to recommend that more opportunities continue to be opened up for more smaller businesses. We would like to see the limit of tours based on the location of parcels relative to publicly maintained roads to be reduced. We would like to see more opportunity so that people can have more tours on their parcels with a minor or use permit. We do appreciate the changes that the board has just made regarding locations of farmers markets. We definitely think it's important for people to be able to have those in areas without appropriate private lands. We want to raise one really key point about the cannabis events related to alcohol products. Right now, it reads that the alcohol should be allowed to be sold wherever in the event, but that cannabis sales would be sequestered off in their own area. And we really believe that in the nature of this, of being a cannabis event, that should be switched. And so if it is a cannabis event, that alcohol should be sold in a separate secured area, but that cannabis be able to be the primary product at the event. Further, we have submitted a memo with specific recommendations for the microbusiness license, which Corrine Powell will be speaking to when she speaks shortly. So again, I want to thank you for your considerations of these items and for working to make the Cannabis Facilities Ordinance as accessible to small businesses as possible. Thank you very much.
Next on the line will be Ron Edwards, followed by Corrine Powell and Monique Ramirez.
Yes, good morning, board. I just wanted to support that the alcohol be separated off. I think the Emerald Cup is a good example of how they do this, that they have their separate beer and wine garden where the main focus is on the cannabis. And in regards to the shared facilities events, I can envision something being like a shared commercial kitchen with a separate packing area. So as long as there are two different premises, I think that the board should look at how that business model can run, because limiting it to just one person at a time would really limit what a business would be able to do. Thank you very much.
Next on the line will be Corrine Powell, followed by Monique Ramirez and Sarah Bodner.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing us to continue with these important issues. I'm Corrine Powell, and I have a 10,000 square foot medicinal cannabis cultivation license. I am concerned that the board is not quite understanding the impact of a micro business license on small farmers here. Unfortunately, Vandy was a little off in that the state allows 10,000 square feet for all of the activities in a micro business license. Forever, many of the farmers have been advocating for the use of micro business licenses in Mendocino County outside of the commercial and industrial zones where they have been approved. Paul Hansberry has also been looking at elements of extending cottage issues into a particular license. I believe that any farmer needs access to the micro business license to allow them to be generally competitive with larger companies who either stack licenses or have multiple facilities where they interchange their products between their facilities without restriction on size or employees. I would like the board to reconsider a standalone micro business license for all the reasons purported in the MCA memo and by many of us in the community. I know that Vandy is aware of this request, as I was on the facilities non-cultivation working group that he referenced. That's very important. Please revisit and discuss opening the micro business license to be more accommodating to our small farm needs. Secondly, I would like to address that given the events of yesterday's decisions and opening into potentially large acreage, hence a potential dramatic change in the way we will work locally, a craft permit is essential to protect the quality of the product that is generated on our small farms of 10,000 square feet or less. I encourage the board to establish a craft permit system. I know that many of you understand the issue, but are reluctant to make a move. Otherwise, it appears that everything in this county is going to the large corporate model, which will be a death knell for many of the active and good actors in small farming.
Next on the line will be Monique Ramirez, followed by Sarah Bodner and Amanda Ryman.
Hello, Board. Monique Ramirez, District 3, representing the Covelo Cannabis Advocacy Group. We want to offer our full support to the statements made by MCA, their memo, as well as what Corrine Powell just stated. It's imperative that we have a micro-business standalone license for operators in Mendocino County, especially given the potential outcome of yesterday's meeting and going in a different direction with expansion. We need to have opportunities for smaller license holders to be able to be competitive against that. And if the zoning doesn't open up, then that is not going to work for people. So we really want to give support to that idea. And we also want to say thank you to Supervisor Haschek for really bringing the issue of farmers markets, especially in our community, to the table for discussion. And we're glad to see that some movements there to allow opportunities for our community, because we don't have necessarily a place to do it otherwise. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak, and thank you.
Next on the line will be Sarah Bodner, followed by Amanda Ryman and Marnie Berger.
Good morning, Chair Jordy and members of the board. This is Sarah Bodner on behalf of the Cannabis Business Association of Mendocino County. I just want to start by saying a giant thank you to the staff and board for your vision in bringing forward these changes. I think it's gotten a bit underplayed how important and significant it is, the changes to the facilities ordinance that are coming forward and how it's really going to set Mendocino County apart. So I celebrate that, and we really appreciate you taking this on. We offer our support for the proposed revisions and appreciate the changes that have also been made today to make this more accessible and the incorporation of the Planning Commission's recommendations. I think that it's really, about making history in Mendocino County right now, that what you've done to allow cannabis tours, tasting rooms, events, lodging, farmers markets, all of these things are going to put Mendocino County on the map as a unique and desirable destination. And we're really excited about what this is going to mean for hospitality and tourism. So thank you.
Next on the line will be Amanda Ryman, followed by Marnie Berger and 5 voicemails.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I really want to echo the sentiments that have been shared so far, especially by Sarah previously speaking. Just thank you. Thank you to the staff. Thank you to the board. This is a very complicated issue. It has taken so much time and effort, and of course, the middle of a pandemic, hopefully towards the end of a pandemic. And it's really been admirable, the amount of time that board and staff has taken to understand this issue, to meet with people, to go out into the field and to see what's happening in the community. So thank you. Thank you for giving that effort. We're very excited about the facilities ordinance. I'm representing Flow Cannabis Company. I'm also representing the Cannabis Tourism Association International, which used to be the California Cannabis Tourism Association. We work with hotels, resorts, other tourist destinations, Cal Travel, really people from all over the country and all over the world that are interested in cannabis tourism. And I think that I don't have to tell anybody that there's an increase in interest in not only agritourism, but people learning more about off-grid living, having opportunities for intentional tourism where they're getting lessons, where they're getting experiences. And I think not only cannabis, but Mendocino County is fully prepared to welcome these individuals, to show them the way of life up here that does include cannabis, but also includes regenerative agriculture, solar, and other types of climate consciousness. So I'm really excited about what this means for the future of Mendocino County, of how this will impact our ability to share our culture here with others. And I think that cannabis will be a big tool in bringing folks up here. Flow Cannabis Company does own the Solar Living Center in Hopland, and we are very excited about the opportunity to showcase the farms and the individuals in this region at that facility and through marketing with organizations like Visit Mendocino, Visit Ukiah, and others in Mendocino working on tourism. So thank you again for all of your work on this. This is a very exciting piece of the changes that are happening in Mendocino County, and we look forward to being a part of it. Thank you very much.
Next on the line will be Marnie Berger, followed by 5 voicemails.
Hi, Board of Supervisors. This is Marnie Berger. So the small changes that you create could be a positive game changer for legacy growers. Both of the following requests are equally important and work hand in hand with each other. Number 1, allow nursery permits on cultivation parcels with a minor use permit. Currently, Mendocino County requires a cultivator to have at least 10 acres of land and requires a major use permit to obtain a nursery permit. Taking clones and making seeds are all part of the cultivation process. Cultivators deserve the right to propagate their own seeds, preserve their genetics, and possess the ability to sell clones and seeds to other licensed cultivators. Many well-known breeders in our community are still not able to hold nursery licenses because they are on parcels smaller than 10 acres. The county should allow any parcel license for cultivation on any acreage to obtain a nursery permit. Remove the major use permit requirement. The state of California does not have a minimum acreage requirement for a nursery license, and the county should align with the state. Number 2, allow 2 cultivation permits per person plus 1 nursery permit for a total of 3 permits per person. That's 2 cultivation, 1 nursery. Some producers hold 2 cultivation licenses for 2 parcels, but are not able to have a nursery permit under the 10A17 ordinance, as a nursery permit counts toward one of the allowed cultivation permits. Cultivators must be granted permission to propagate their own seeds, preserve genetics, experiment with genetics, and be empowered to sell the plants and seeds to other licensed cultivators. Provide an opportunity for legacy growers to generate supplemental income for their businesses and also contribute additional sales tax revenue to the county. Make the nursery licenses affordable. Also, I align with the recommendations in the CCAG memo. Please read it again. If you listen to the experts who are the legacy growers, this would work out well. Consider aligning with the memo. I also align with the MCA memo, specifically the standalone micro business license. And I just wanted to say thank you, Supervisor Hashek. We respect you. We appreciate you. And we voted for you in the 3rd district, and we like how you represent us. Thank you.
Supervisor Williams, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, real quick. There are some good ideas there. I don't think necessarily related to the ordinance at hand. I wonder, given that we're talking about transitioning cultivation to a new style of outdoor and more nurseries will be required, maybe we could refer this to Supervisor McGordy to study the options and come back with recommendations on how nurseries fit into the new vision.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that because we have lots of small nurseries in our county. That's been one of our business patterns. And I don't think that nurseries have the same impact that grows do in terms of smell and such. And they can fit pretty well into relatively small spaces.
Would you be willing to study it a bit and come back with recommendations? We're not really agendized for it today.
Okay, I would.
Okay, right, thanks. Going to the next speaker.
My name is Raina Matthews, and I'm calling about the Facilities Ordinance 3A, and asking you today to not adopt the Facilities Ordinance 3A, there has not been enough review of the impact in our county for such large-scale gatherings of cannabis tourism and administrative permits. My understanding is that those are meant for temporary projects, and this ordinance seems to be ushering in a countywide change that the people have a right to be informed of and be able to be a greater part of the process if we were to, at some point in the future, adopt something like this. Rushing forward with this plan is an example of premature adoption of an ordinance, and there has not been adequate research. So I'm urging you today to slow down, to stop, to hear that the people of Mendocino County are saying, no, we don't want this. We don't want this right now. We don't want this unless there is time and space to do the necessary research. The staffs are underpaid and there's a high turnover. I've experienced that a lot myself as a Mendocino cannabis grower, that there are always new people on the job. There is a lot of chaos, and there is going to be a temptation in this case to just rubber stamp, say yes, have things go through, not considering the impact. And that has been proven in Trinity County that has something similar to this. And they just let a lot of things slide, and we need to do better. We can do better. Thank you. Goodbye.
Colin Harris, 3A. As a cottage farmer, it is imperative that I be able to make direct sales, have a path forward in the market, selling to consumers, and being able to market myself with small batch, high quality flower. All small farmers need a path forward with as much enthusiasm as the new batch of wealthy land barons are being shown. We have all been waiting in the queue for years and now watching the side door being opened for the VIPs. For all the marginalized people of this county, we have been watching as every leg up that we had in the market has been hobbled by the overzealous capitalists with no understanding of a community or balanced economic ecosystem. The same people that shunned us, denied land and community access, exploit their mostly Mexican labor force. The middle class was here in Mendocino. It was mostly middle class. And since legalization, this has been polarized to the rich and poor. It's creating a feudal plantation system for the benefit of the 1%ers while the rest of us toil in silence, working the monocropped acres of mediocre plant mass. Maybe it's time to listen to your constituents, law enforcement, scientists, et cetera, et cetera. It's time to get out from behind the camera and put yourself in people's shoes on the farms, in different cultures, find a path of access for the Native Americans into the market, for the poor that own less than 5 acres. As a Jew, I am very tuned in to what it feels like to be railroaded out of town, to allow the ruling class to marginalize those that they don't understand, that are more skilled in the trade that they want to undertake and dominate. To push out the legacy farmers and previous applicants is criminal, and to dangle yet another carrot of social equity with very little ability for access is yet another insult to injury. How much money do you need? How many times do we have to pass go handing money to smiling county employees while not making $1 of profit? I implore you to listen to those without financial lobbying power, those with nothing left to lose, those that voted and gave you the opportunity to profit from the already flourishing industry. We are not criminals. We've just dared to dream of a world without oppression, without overtaxation, and without being sold to the highest bidder. Time to make the program work for the Phase 1 applicants or pass it on to a department that can.
My name is Ellen Drell, and this is for item 3A, the Cannabis Facilities Ordinance Amendments. When I first heard the details of the proposed facilities ordinance amendments that being discussed at the March Planning Commission meeting, knowing by that time that the Board of Supervisors was also proposing to expand the locations and sizes of the cannabis cultivation sites, my concerns escalated from shock to anger to becoming sick at heart. The 5 commissioners were putting much of what I value about my home and neighborhood on the auction block and debating the fine points of how to dismantle it and sell it. These commissioners, of course, did not know that my rural neighborhood that fronts on a county road sees itself as a community that shares certain values, that we've worked together to protect our dark night sky, that we respect each other's desire for peace and quiet. One of us has worked hard to keep the county road that links our parcels. Yes, we are on a county road, which the Planning Commission seems to think condemns us to fewer protections from commercial activities, such as these facilities ordinances. Yes, on our county road, we've tried to keep it from becoming a dirt bike racetrack. Years ago, the neighborhood created a voluntary agreement to protect native wildlife in our neighborhood. Many of us walk the road for recreation. We sometimes gather to celebrate holidays. We treasure this place where we live, and the facilities ordinance, together with the proposed expansion cultivation sites, has the potential to degrade every financial, emotional, and community investment that we have made, both individually and together, in this home. I'm sure none of you would do such a thing intentionally. I hope you understand that today the board is should be nowhere near agreeing to these amendments to this ordinance, and that you have only begun to consider the cultural, social, and environmental impacts of what passage of this ordinance could unleash. The staff would have you believe that this facilities ordinance could not possibly have an impact, and therefore they are recommending that this ordinance be exempt from any environmental review under the general rule exception. Staff also suggests that this ordinance could not possibly constitute a nuisance of detrimental to health or be detrimental to the health, safety, peace, morals, and comfort or general welfare of people living in the neighborhood, a mandatory finding. I'm here to tell you, you cannot make either of these findings, not in my neighborhood. Please do not.
Hello, this is Madge Strong, and I am addressing the Board of Supervisors on the Facilities Ordinance, item 3A, I believe it is. I live in Willits. I am really, again, very, very concerned that when you allow something by your ordinance, that you consider the total impact of every single affected parcel or activity that could happen from that ordinance, not just a one-by-one case study of them, and that when you look at the cumulative impacts of allowing a lot of facilities all over the place in our county, you could have unintended consequences. And it's so much better to avoid allowing something that is a destructive presence in our community than it is to, to undo damage. And sometimes it's impossible to undo damage that's done rather than to avoid allowing it in the first place. So to be the precautionary principle as your board members, to please consider the possibility that you're taking us in the direction that your constituents, the people that live in this county, do not want to go. I personally want cannabis businesses to be a respected and legitimate part of our economy, but I only want them if the restrictions and the locations are consistent with the quality of life of our residents. That is your first priority, not making money or even stimulating the economy. Stimulating the economy has to be done with a balance of protecting our environment and protecting our residents. So I urge you to scale way back, or better yet, take a one-year moratorium and really reconsider all of the impacts of changing both the land uses and the facilities that are allowed within those land uses, because I really fear that you are opening the door to a circus rather than a legitimate economic activity. And we the residents, don't want a circus in our county. Thank you very much.
My name is Donna Mecca, and I'm calling regarding the facilities ordinance that's being considered, and I'm asking you to reject opening facilities to expanded use. I'm in opposition to expanding permits that allow events and tours for a crop that is not helping our economy, and it's defacing our natural resources. If we as citizens are asked to monitor our water usage because of the drought conditions, how is it that you, as a board, can consider creating venues for large groups and expanding activities at existing sites? Who is going to pay for the impact to the community, the increased noise, the increased traffic, and the contamination of land and water? Please reject this terrible, terrible idea of expanding this situation.
That concludes public comment for this item.
Supervisor McGordy?
So this question is for our planning department. For someone who wants to open up a winery tasting room, what is the procedure for them to do so? Is it similar to what we're talking about here with a cannabis processing facility and sales opportunity?
Vandy, interim senior planner. For a tasting room, really, if you're in an ag, rangeland, forest land, or any zoning district that allows a winery, it's just a building permit.
And I assume they also need a business license?
I believe so, but they should probably already have one for the winery itself.
Okay, and then if you're on a private road versus a county road or public road?
No difference.
No difference. Okay, so it's a more liberal process than it is what we're talking about here.
Correct.
All right, so I think that there is a good point about cumulative impact, and we might as a board want to roll this out, with some level of caution and not issue a whole bunch of permits at once without knowing what's going to happen. That being said, I really support direct-to-consumer sales. I think it's really a good idea, but if there's a way where we can spread the businesses out so they don't all concentrate in one place all at once, I think it might give us a little bit of time to be sure that we're not creating the issues that people are talking about. I don't suspect a problem, but if there's a way for us to possibly just through the processing and permitting processing permits that will do it. I don't know, but I worry about creating another situation where it does get a little bit out of hand and there may be unintended consequences that could happen. Sorry to be nervous, Nellie, but I am concerned about that. I think that there's issues when we suddenly start new businesses without really knowing quite what's going to happen when we do so. But I do applaud the idea of the farmers market idea. Is really good because that gives people access. It works well for a lot of growers of other produce because they realize it's difficult for people to find them, and then also bring in traffic directly into their house. I think that's a great option. So I'm just kind of randomly sharing some ideas that I've had during this discussion.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Williams?
Yeah, could staff talk about the revocation process? Should we get complaints? What will it take to revoke a permit? And what does the renewal or non-renewal process look like? At that stage, do we take into account problems at the particular business?
So Vandy, interim senior planner. So it really depends, I guess, what kind of permit they have. If they have a cannabis facilities business license, then I believe it's just, violation of the county code stands for revocation. And I believe the same, is true for discretionary permits. Though discretionary permits require a notice that they are going to be, the revocation is an option, and they get about 30 days to remedy the situation. Yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, that answers it. I had the same concern as Supervisor McGorty, but it sounds like it's fairly tight leash that if we do have complaints and the complaints are substantiated, county has the right to revoke the permit and shut it down. So I think that'll really encourage businesses to stay 100% compliant.
Supervisor Hashak.
Thank you, Chair Judy. I'm concerned about this, the farm tours. And we had the recommendation from the Planning Commission. 3 of them wanted the cannabis farm tours on parcels without frontage on a publicly maintained road shall require a minor use permit. And then 1 required a major use permit. And then 1 was allowing 1 tour per week of no more than 25 persons as an accessory use to the cannabis cultivation site. It seemed like there was a spectrum within the Planning Commission, and the staff took the most lenient 1-person opinion. And I would like to go back to the majority opinion, which was to require a minor use permit. And that would give us more control over these private roads when we don't know what the implications of these farm tours are going to be. If it's going to be 1 tour bus coming once a day, or 25 cars, or what. Since let's go for the minor use permit like the Planning Commission says, and see how it goes. And if it's too strict in the future, if it's working out fine, we don't have any problems, it's working well, then maybe we can revisit it. But I think for this cautious approach that Supervisor McGorty's proposing, I think that would be appropriate.
I have a comment on the farm tours, but go ahead, Supervisor Mulhern.
I had a comment on the farm tours as well. I mean, I think, we've already heard that tasting rooms don't have as much requirements. And we have heard from many cultivators that this is going to be a very large and important part of their business. And only 1 farm tour per week is already a very minimal amount of ability for sales. So I do think it's important for consumers to be able to see where their product is coming from. It's really part of Mendocino's brand. And I think that we should give it a try. And as was discussed, there are remedies or actions that can be taken if it doesn't turn out well.
So my thought on the farm tours. So first of all, I think the ordinance has a lot of really good requirements in it. For example, the cannabis tours are not to take place in the rural residential neighborhoods or the suburban residential neighborhoods. So that's a really important point for the public to understand. However, neighborhoods are adjacent to each other and they may share the same road. So a county road or a private road that goes through a rural residential neighborhood or a suburban residential neighborhood might be adjacent to a different zoning district that does allow the farm tour. So they could still be sharing the same road and the same traffic. So then there's that. So then I understand there is the ability to revoke, but we've also heard from our previous discussion, recently we've heard a lot of comment that the county needs to have a proactive code enforcement and not put the burden on neighbors to report their neighbors for code violations. And so the board's agreed to do that, to have a proactive code enforcement as it relates to cannabis. I'm curious about how that will actually unfold for excessive farm tours, for the operator that has 2 and 3 tours in excess of what's allowed under the code. Are we going to rely on the neighbors to report it? How are we really going to revoke their permit? I know that with some use permits, there's an automatic renewal, and maybe one thing to do would be to say, we're going to allow them, but as proposed, but there's an automatic renewal process where people comment on it. I don't know. There's different ways to approach it. I just want to make sure that we are not creating a perceived entitlement in perpetuity that is harder to revoke after the fact. So go to Planning and Building and see a hand raised there.
Hi, thank you. Vandy, Interim Senior Planner. I would just like to clarify that the enforcement, I think that discussion is really largely based on the cultivation side. I actively go and do active enforcement for facilities. I did so last year. I didn't do it this year at this point yet because of COVID, but I intend to go back and start up again next year. And it is me and an individual from the building division, and we go to every single approved active facility in the county to ensure that they're compliant with county code.
And if I may, through the chair, Nash Gonzalez, I just want to go ahead and address the use permit process for, let's just say, the enforcement is we can take the initial permits and put an expiration date or a time period by which these permits can be revisited by staff or the Planning Commission for checking to make sure there's compliance with the conditions of approval. So if you put an expiration date on these, it basically requires the applicant to come back and reapply, and making sure that it goes through a thorough review a second time around. And this is where the public gets an opportunity to review and comment if whether there's any neighborhood concerns and so on. We've done this with a lot of permits over the years. It seems to work very well. They come in, they get a 2-year permit. They come back through as a renewal, and if there's no issues or complaints, the permit can then be issued for a longer period of time. They could be assigned to, let's say, the zoning administrator or the director to review. There also has to be a fee built into that for the cost of the review. Or mainly it would be just a report taken back to the Planning Commission that would indicate what findings were made based on the review of the project. But in any case, this has been done in the past, and we can check on the businesses or check on the permittee to make sure that the conditions of approval have been adequately satisfied and there's no complaints. So there is a process in place. Thank you.
Okay, I just think it'd be prudent to say there's some kind of renewal process. Maybe it's 2 years.
If I may, through the chair as well, Vandy, Interim Senior Planner, I would like to note that with our business licenses, that we do actually have to do renewals every year, and we do have businesses that end up in local violation that are unable to renew. I believe we currently have 3 businesses that are non-compliant with local regulations that currently are not allowed to renew. So we do have renewal periods in which that they can be blocked at renewing currently as our process.
Supervisor McGordy?
To the planning department, or really to anybody on the board, how many applications do you think we're going to get? And should they be rationed out, or how do you want to proceed?
Since you're asking the board, when it comes to submitting a complete application and working through the process, I wouldn't anticipate very many. Mm-hmm. And my guess here is this will have very little impact, probably less than tasting rooms that already exist. And, I imagine if tasting rooms for the grape growers were proposed today, we would be having the same discussion. We'd be talking about dismantling neighborhoods. We haven't seen it. I think it creates some jobs, creates some revenue for the county. We desperately need that. If it's a problem, we shut it down. If there's code violations, we revoke. It looks to me like planning staff put a good procedure in place.
Well, I just want to comment. Planning department, please.
Oh, if I may, for the chair, excuse me, Vandy. I would just like to note that last year for 2020, we only received about, I believe, 13 to 15 business licenses, and this year we've only received 4.
Okay, so it's not like we're going to be overrun with all of a sudden with cannabis tasting rooms or facilities, and I still think it's an important part as I talk about this kind of bifurcated industry where one of them is about high quality cannabis that Mendocino hangs its hat on. There has to be access for small producers to their customers for it to work, for it to be a good model, as opposed to the more industrial, larger scale kind of growing, which is going to be really geared towards processing. It's going to be a very different sort of industry. So I think if we want a healthy cannabis industry, this is something that we need. And the farmers market idea, I think, is quite good because that gives people fairly easy access. And it's not as difficult as trying to maintain a place of business.
Okay. So we've had public comment. Let's see. Any additional public board member comments or questions of staff?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I think that of course it was brought to our attention again today, and it has been with the board moving forward with the new ordinance, especially for the discretionary permit and allowing for larger uses. We know that we have a limited number of people that entered into the phase 1 application process. We really are missing a piece of cultivation in our community, the craft cultivators that do not have large acreage. And I really want to talk about that as a board. I understand that's not on the agenda today, but I wonder if we could have some support about looking at what are we going to do to those folks, because we heard from the gentleman from Humboldt that Humboldt is now in the situation where that's who's left, the people that are growing 25 plants or less, and they're trying to figure out how to enforce on those folks and also experiencing some public or political backlash. And it seems like if the board is asking for enforcement, we should be ahead of the game and be prepared to when we get down to that number like Humboldt is now 2 or 3 years later.
I support a meeting for this purpose.
I thought I had my hand up. Yeah, I would support Supervisor Mulheron's idea about creating a craft permit and looking into that.
So I don't completely understand what that means. So can you expound a little bit, Mo, on that? So
it's likely that as we move forward in the phase 3 application process, and we move forward with people that are not fitting into phase 1 or didn't get into phase 1, don't qualify on the larger acreage that we require, the 5 acres and up for phase 3, that there are smaller producers that we're missing a piece of production in Mendocino County that's a smaller market, 25 plants or less, maybe on not large acreage. And I would like to see some type of process for them to get into the regulated market if they choose. I'm happy to, of course, agree that we need enforcement if they're not going to get into the regulated market, but it's, it's a piece that we're missing with how we're rolling things out.
So can I ask a question? Are you thinking of like a community garden situation where you have multiple people cultivating on an appropriately zoned site?
Sorry, no, I'm probably thinking of more like homesteader, small scale operators.
So we've
And
received,
I don't know what the answer is yet. I just wanted to bring up the subject and hope that we could continue to have the conversation, because I'm not.
The board's received, you weren't on the board at the time, but the board's received enormous public feedback that commercial cannabis in residential neighborhoods is not appropriate. And you don't have many of those outside of the city of Ukiah, because your district is almost entirely the city of Ukiah. But for those of us who have a substantial number of suburban residential neighborhoods in our districts, we've heard that loud and clear that with the exception of South Leggett, with the exception of Laytonville, with the exception of Covelo, the people who lived on suburban residential parcels overwhelmingly said they do not want commercial cannabis in their neighborhoods.
I appreciate that, but there may be some individuals that are on ag land that own less than 3.5 acres. So I'm just looking at, I'm not talking about residential neighborhoods. I'm not talking about bringing back the opt-out zones. I'm just looking for a path forward for as many people as possible.
Okay, Supervisor Williams?
Yeah, I support having the meeting. The state regulations supported by statewide voters make the process for somebody who has 25 plants commercial versus 100 plants or 5,000 plants makes it about the same. And so, the costs involved, the regulatory requirements, we have a lot of people who, will come and tell our board they've done everything, that staff isn't processing their application. When we look into it, their parcel size doesn't match, or they've done everything right and they happen to be in a flood zone. There's each project has a different set of problems, but the way the state has architected this, it's very difficult for what we consider legacy, residential neighborhood, backyard. It's hard for them to get through. I mean, look at Covelo, the sensitive species. Other counties don't have this problem because they don't have the sensitive species we have. So I support having the meeting. I don't really know what to do with it. I think we all hear from constituents who want a legal version of what we used to have. And what's missing is there was a subsidy. Law enforcement was a subsidy that drove the price up above $5,000 a pound. Now, 90% of the value has been removed. People are wanting to scale up. I think that trend will continue. The price will continue to fall as supply ramps up in California, and then we see interstate commerce. We don't have cheap land, cheap labor. We don't have much water. We don't have cheap energy. We don't have a lot of the ingredients to compete on a commodity. We do have people, I think this is what Mo's getting at, who want to compete in a small craft, high quality product that's unique, that perhaps can't be mass produced on large farms. I think we should have a meeting about that and see how county policy can facilitate it.
Okay. We will have the clerk of the board check with everyone's schedules for future meetings. We've dedicated a tremendous amount of time to this one subject already, and I think it'd be a mistake if the board comes across the public as changing directions on commercial cannabis. And I think we should get clarification when I hear supervisors say 25 plants. Are they saying 25 plants or 2,500 square feet?
Yeah, Chair, I'm not suggesting we bring 25 plants into small rural residential neighborhoods. I think the board has had that discussion, but I think there's some value in discussing, well, what do we do? We have thousands of people who cannot come into compliance. Their land doesn't qualify. They're not going to meet the requirements for a state license. Now that their neighbors know they're in it, their neighbors are not supportive. It makes sense to have the discussion about what do we do? Maybe it's cooperatives on shared ag land. I don't know what the solution is, but I think there's some value. We do have a problem. We have thousands of people who are not going to get into the legal system. And if we could begin enforcement, suddenly won't have a revenue stream.
Okay. I see the clerk of the board or county council raising their hand. I want to go to them.
Chair Jurdy, this is CEO Angelo. I just wanted to say that I would concur that our meeting time is limited. Every new meeting that the board adds is a cannabis meeting. And so we have We have presentations around the PG&E funding coming up. There'll be, at a minimum, 2 more sessions with the board. We have the budget development, then budget hearings in June. So I just wanted to be clear that as we move forward, is this an item that you want us to move to the top and move other items out? I would hope that answer is no, since you have a lot of pressing issues here, particularly around the budget, and that could this item come forward after July? Thank you. If this board does decide to move forward with this, my concern is this schedule is tighter, and every meeting we add is a full-on cannabis meeting, and there's a lot of business of the county that I'm concerned about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm not looking to add an entire new cannabis meeting. I am looking for a little flexibility to work on if we can find a path forward. No desire to bring it before July. I just heard very clearly that we are going to get to a point where we have people that are missing from the system. And I just would appreciate some support to try to come up with some solutions for that. No, I'm not pushing for a separate meeting. I'm not pushing for this to be at the top of anything. We've done a lot of work around cannabis. I'm very excited about moving all of these policies that we had yesterday and that we had today forward. I just want to be prepared and know that I personally have tried my best to help everybody that I could.
Okay, Supervisor Williams?
Well, would you be willing to work on that agenda item? It sounds like there's support. We don't want a whole meeting, but 60 to 90 minutes.
Yep.
I would support you.
Okay, I think we've heard that it would probably be available sometime after the budget's approved. Okay, we still are in a public hearing. Any additional questions relating to this public hearing item from board members to staff? Not seeing any. I see planning and building has raised their hands.
Hi, thank you, Vandy, interim senior planner. So we currently have 2 directions from the board, which includes the allowance of farmers markets on the street, as well as the removal of number of users for a shared use facility. There was the beginning of a discussion regarding farm tours on private, or sorry, not on frontage of a publicly maintained road. Supervisor Williams was seeking to have it be the 3 tours per week or the 25 persons. I just wanted to bring that up, that direction had not been provided on that.
Are we looking for a motion?
We are. I would like to hear planning and building repeat what is the process for, you said there's an annual review process to confirm that applicants are conforming to the permit?
Well, so Vandy, interim senior planner. So if you, with the current language, if you had a cultivator on a public or private road, and they were operating under the amount required for a minor use permit, we would be able to revoke their retail license that allows them to provide the sales at their cultivation site. And then if they do end up with the minor use permit, again, we give them a 30-day notice that they need to come into compliance.
And that would be based on public input or your annual review? I'm just trying to understand how you would know whether or not they were violating the requirements for limited tours.
Sorry, so it could be either. It could either be through the public providing comment that they're operating out of compliance, or it could be through one of staff's active enforcement engagements that we do once a year for facilities.
Okay. Great. It looks like there's no more questions of staff, so we'll go at 10:39. We'll close the public hearing. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move the recommended action as amended today.
A second.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, just a process issue. Since I think we're looking at adoption of the ordinance, we may need to take a break, figure out whether the amendments are things that would require referral back to the planning commission. And if they can be adopted today, we may need to get the final language or have direction for staff to come back with revised language.
Okay, are you requesting a break at the moment?
Yes, if we could get just a few minutes to look at some of that, and then we can speak on that.
Okay, all right, so it's 10:40. We will come back at 11 o'clock.
You call him.
Thank you.
That he's going to talk to Christian because I already told him. I said, I don't
Okay.
agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't agree with you.
So we were looking to county council and planning a building that they were, during the break, going to look at revised language.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe that Planning and Building has uploaded some the amendments that have been requested by the board. We did confirm that everyone's comfortable that the changes are within the scope of what had been previously discussed, and that there's no need to refer to the Planning Commission. So this would be an introduction and waiver of the first reading of the ordinance as amended, and I believe they've uploaded and they're prepared to share their screen just to confirm that they've actually accurately captured the changes that the board wants.
So moved.
All right, thank you. So Vandy, interim senior planner, I'm going to share my screen, and I believe this is attachment 6 now up on Granicus. So let me organize a little. So we have, let's see where to go.
It's going to be page.
I think it's right here.
Yeah.
So under section 5, which is Mendocino County Code 20.243.040, we had the brief change just to remove the limits on the number of users for a shared use facility. And then the other change that we had direction for was to allow cannabis farmers markets on streets. So we just revised this just so that it can't be conducted. No cannabis farmers market shall be conducted in a park or any youth-oriented facility. Public fairgrounds are not included in this prohibition. And those are all the changes we have recorded.
Dan, you're muted.
Okay, Supervisor Williams.
Yeah, did we capture the 25, more than 25 per day clause?
We did not. There was, we didn't have consensus on that.
Is that true? I thought we had 3.
We did not see 3.
Yeah, this is Julia Krog. At least staff did not observe that there were 3, but if that's an additional change, then we can certainly incorporate that in as well if directed so by the board.
Chair, could we poll to see if there are 3?
Yeah, Supervisor Williams, would you restate what the proposal was?
Yeah. The proposal is on 20.243.040 D7B to add a clause or more than 25 people per tour. So it would read, farm tours of parcels with frontage on a publicly maintained road may have up to 3 tours per week as an accessory use to the cannabis cultivation, with each tour not to exceed 25 persons. For more than 3 tours per week or more than 25 people per tour, a minor use permit shall be required, which shall be under the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. And the rationale is it may be that someone proposes 30 guests once a week, and the language as originally presented wouldn't allow that, yet it's a lesser impact. So I would rather leave it to Planning Commission discretion than try to lock in a formula.
Yeah, I would support that.
I can go with that too.
Okay.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
All right, that's 3. Supervisor Hashak.
And I'd like to go back to this thing about the tours and, for non-public access. And, I would like to go with what the Planning Commission recommended. And if there's majority on that.
Can you rephrase that? I'm not following.
It's for the Planning Commission, 3 out of the 5 recommended cannabis farm tours on parcels without frontage on a publicly maintained road shall require a minor use permit under the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission and are subject to section 20.243.
So I would be happy to support you on that. Kind of mixed messages. All the feedback today seemed to be from the 3rd district, and it was against this. And this would be making it more lenient by moving from a major use permit to a minor use permit. I'm happy to support it, just want to be clear.
That's not my understanding. My understanding is that the board, the staff had come with the recommendation that it was, you could have 1 tour per week and no more than 25, and then after that, you would get a minor use permit. So it would be a little more stringent. And my concern is the cumulative effect of, you might have 10, 15 different parcels on a road, a private road, that you might have major impact from traffic, and so I think that a minor use permit might be appropriate, and that's what the Planning Commission recommended. The one commissioner recommended a major use permit, and one recommended, the 1 tour by right. So I just want to make sure that we're taking into consideration the people who live, the residents in these areas, and go with what the Planning Commission recommended.
Well, so again, I'll just restate. I think the farm tours is a great concept, but I do see the potential for difficulty in administering this permit. I don't understand how Planning and Building Department is really going to enforce this. If it in theory allows for 25 guest parking spaces at a cultivation site, and the operator said, well, my tour is today between 1 and 3 o'clock. And at any one time, there's never more than 25 parking spaces taken up. Who's to say it was all one tour, or just that at no one time were there more than 25 spaces taken up? It just seems like it's going to be difficult for planning and building to enforce this ordinance the way it's written. So I think there should be some sort of check-in by the permittee holders, after 2 years, just to confirm that they're not abusing the traffic capacity of the road that they're on. Supervisor Hashak?
So I guess this having a minor use permit would at least allow people to look at it and to understand what the consequences of, what if you had 10 of these sites on one road?
Yeah, so I would support the minor use permit if it's on a private road. But I'm not, Supervisor McGordy?
I would as well. Minor use permit, just some way of having a review process to be sure that people are compliant. I am concerned because I've seen this in the wine industry too. When you start going on private roads and you have traffic, it's different than a public road in terms of people's perception. And I know there's been conflicts over this, so it's an area where we want to be sure that we exert a little bit of concern and control, so that if there is abuse or problems, that there's recourse for people who are also co-owners of that road.
Okay, Supervisor Williams?
Yeah, I think staff has heard the spirit of at least the majority. Is it possible to incorporate some language that won't require this to go back to Planning Commission?
If I may respond to the chair, we're actually sort of discussing that right now. I'm not entirely sure that I have clarification exactly what the direction was. Is the change to section C intended to be only requiring a permit in the event of that the property is on a private road? Because we may already have some structures to that effect in there, and I see Planning and Building has their hand up as well.
If I may, through the chair. So, Vandy, interim senior planner, the conversation kind of started on 7B, and then it's transitioned a little bit into 7C. So we can certainly make the change for 7C, which is the tours on parcels without frontage on a publicly maintained road. I've already gone ahead and written shall require a minor use permit under the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. So that would be regardless. There wouldn't be any farm tours allowed without a minor use permit. We're still not getting clear direction on 7B though.
I'm confused as well. I'm really lost. Could Supervisor Hascheck restate the change? What would the language be, starting with a section?
Well, the change would be going to what the Planning Commission recommended, which
How can we follow along? Can you read us the change?
yeah, it would just say cannabis farm tours on parcels without frontage on a publicly maintained road shall require a minor use permit under the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission and are subject to section 20.243.040 D9 of this chapter. So I don't see why it would need to go back to the Planning Commission because that's what the majority of the Planning Commission recommended.
Okay, I see Planning and Building's hand is raised.
Thank you. We actually just forgot to lower our hand, but thank you for calling upon us. I'll lower our hand now.
Okay, thanks. Well, so can this be addressed in item C as I thought Vandy just said it could?
Yes, Vandy, interim senior planner. So if we could first focus on C, I guess, because it's kind of the easier language to write. So what Supervisor Hascheck is proposing is that 7C would change to read cannabis farm tours on parcels without frontage on a publicly maintained road shall require a minor use permit under the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission pursuant to section 20.243.040 D9 of this chapter.
That's correct.
So if we could just get clarification if the board is in support of that language or of the language that's currently written.
So I support that language.
I do as well.
I do.
And I've got a clarifying question. In definitions, when it refers to frontage onto a road, does that also mean that that is the access point is on that frontage road? I'm just imagining that there could be a parcel that adjoined, one part of the parcel is fronting onto a public road and another part of the parcel fronts onto a privately maintained road. And I guess there could be a reason why the driveway is off of the private road. So does frontage mean that the access point to the parcel is off the frontage?
No, it does not. That the frontage just means that at least one of the property lines has, it shares a boundary with a publicly maintained road, and that's pursuant to existing language on how we do like vacation home rentals on a private road. That's exactly how that works as well. So if you have access on a private road, but you still have frontage of part of your parcel on a public road, then you would qualify for the B as opposed to the C.
So it seems like the intent is that the access point is on the public road, not that the access point, not that it adjoins a public road.
Vandy, interim senior, again, we were just following how we currently have the language written for vacation home rentals, which
sounds like maybe the language for vacation rentals needs to be changed as well.
Second. Yeah, so I think the public concern is well heard. If we're talking about accessing a farm via a private road, a minor use permit should be required. We want more review. If access is from a publicly maintained road, we don't need that minor use permit.
So I know we're asking for more wordsmithing, but could you amend the language to say if access to the site is from a public road or is from a private road? I mean, just change the language so it rather than adjoins.
Vandy, interim senior planner. Sure, I can do that. And would you like that for both 7B and 7C, just so to keep it consistent and clear?
I think so. Just look at the rest of the board. Is that the intent?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
This is Julia Krog. So then the only other change that maybe we should come back to is related to 7B.
Okay.
And Supervisor Williams' suggested language.
I thought I saw 3 supervisors support that, but do you want to restate what that change would be?
Chair, are you asking me to restate it?
Yeah, if you're looking at B.
Yeah, so the second sentence, for more than 3 tours per week, comma, or more than 25 people per tour, comma, a minor use permit shall be required, comma, which shall be under the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. So the change is to insert or more than 25 people per tour. That will trigger the minor use permit requirement.
So I would support that.
You as well.
Okay, so let me just read through. In fact, let me try share screen. Yeah. Let me share screen so I can show you what we have changed. There we go. So for B, we have cannabis farm tours on parcels with access from a publicly maintained road may have up to 3 tours per week of no more than 25 persons per tour as an accessory use to the cultivation site pursuant to this chapter. A minor use permit under the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission shall be required for more than 3 tours per week or more than 25 people per tour. And then going down to C, cannabis farm tours on parcels without access from a publicly maintained road shall require a minor use permit under the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission pursuant to this chapter. Does that look good to the board?
Yes.
Well, Chair, since we're fixing this language, I think this still allows private roads to be used for the farm tours, right? The question isn't whether the parcel is frontage or whether it has access on a public road. It's that the farm tour traffic access the farm via a public road. And so, on a large parcel, you don't want just the fact that they have access to the facility off a public road. We don't want them to send traffic down a private road because it's a better route or it's an alternate road. We want the egress to be the public access.
So if I may, through the chair, we could just add to this B an additional sentence that says access shall not be, Julia?
Let's see, access shall not be along a private road.
Farm tours shall only be accessed from publicly maintained roads.
Okay.
That works without a minor use permit.
So then we should do this. And then right here I edit.
And what was that language again we're doing?
Cannabis farm tours shall only be accessed from a publicly maintained road.
Well, that doesn't. I think that isn't quite the logic we're looking for. So, cannabis farm tours on parcels with a publicly maintained road may have up to 3 tours per week of no more than 25 persons per tour as an accessory use to the cannabis cultivation site, so long as access is via a public road, comma.
How about, Chair Dirty, if I could jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
And Vandy, what if you wrote cannabis farm tours on parcels accessed from a publicly maintained road?
I don't think that, I don't know, Supervisor Williams, does that address what you were concerned about?
No, that creates the problem in that just because a parcel can be accessed by a public road, we don't want to allow traffic on a private road without a minor use permit.
So maybe we change C so that it requires that all cannabis farm.
Private. Basically a private road. Would this address it better then to say that a minor use permit under the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission shall be required for more than 3 tours per week or more than 25 people per tour, or if it requires access to the site down a private road?
Yes.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Godrowski, through the chair, could we just rephrase that first clause to be cannabis farm tours on parcels with direct access from a publicly maintained road? Is
that works?
Excellent. That's a simpler change. Thank you for that. So let's go direct. Now, does this look in line with the direction from the board?
Looking to the board, some thumbs up.
Yes.
Okay. I think it looks like it's the direction of the board.
Excellent. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and stop sharing our screen here then.
Sorry.
That would cover all those changes.
Mr. Chair, is the direction for the same change to be made to C as well as B?
I heard that earlier. Go.
Yes. I would just ask, make sure that planning and building had captured that.
Okay, it looks like there was direction on C and B as well.
Yes, we've captured both.
So that would revise the first clause in C as well to say direct access rather than just access. So thank you for that.
Is there anything else that staff wants to discuss further before we vote on the motion?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, right. Well,
Mr. Chair,
go ahead.
Sorry. I don't know that we currently have a second to the motion, or at least the clerk of the board hasn't captured it just yet. And it may be useful to restate the motion and clarify that it's pertaining to all of the amendments just recited by the board and captured by planning and building.
Okay, at 11:22, Supervisor Williams would like to make a motion.
Oh, I would love to. I move we introduce and waive the first reading of an ordinance amending Mendocino County Code Chapter 6.36 and Chapter 20.243 regarding cannabis facilities as amended.
I will second that.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Okay, not seeing any. Can we have a roll call?
Supervisor Mulhern?
Yes.
Supervisor Hashak?
Yes.
Chair Jury?
Yes.
Supervisor Williams?
Yes.
And Supervisor McGorty?
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Chair and Supervisors.
Okay, and thank you, planning staff, for continuing to meet with us today. We do have one final thing on this agenda that started last week, which is, do we have any telecomment on items not on the agenda?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
How many?
So we had around 15 sign up, but at this time there are only 6 who are currently on the line.
First on the line will be Amanda Ryman, followed by Ron Edwards and Corrine Powell.
Hi, I did not sign up to give a general comment, so I will yield my time. Thank you.
Next on the line will be Ron Edwards, Corrine Powell, and then Monique Ramirez.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, board. Yeah, I'm calling for a couple of things. I think that yesterday Ted Williams brought up a very good thing about having the county come up with a list of what is and what isn't. I've been meeting with a lot of the people who were really against the 10% expansion, and they really don't quite get what that permit is. A lot of them say that they don't have full permits, and I would like, it would be nice if the county could get clear that most people have as far as the county can go with permitting. The other issue I'd like to address is around the tax program. A lot of talk has been going on around the water about not being able to put crops in or having a reduced yield. So I'm wondering if there is some way to work for tax relief if a farmer is not cultivating as much as they normally cultivate, or less, that there could be some type of break for the taxes that are due on that. Thank you very much.
Next on the line will be Corrine Powell, followed by Monique Ramirez and Jessica Harness.
Good afternoon again, Board. Ron just took the words out of my mouth. I believe that if indeed cultivators in cannabis are voluntarily reducing their cultivation areas due to water conservation, that the true-up tax be irrelevant during these drought conditions, that the gross receipts tax is potentially the viable vehicle for taxation, and eliminate the true-up to the various permit amounts that are currently required. So in my particular case, I'm looking at a reduction of 30 to 40% of my garden area, which is a significant amount in terms of potential revenue. However, I will be trying to advocate for the continued use of my commercial trucked in water when I need it until I'm able to build a pond. So please consider this seriously. Without a reduction for production reduction, we are burdened unnecessarily, and it makes no sense. So thank you for your consideration. I hope you will address this issue and not just supposedly being a listening audience and not an active decision-making body. Thank you very much.
Next on the line will be Monique Ramirez, followed by Jessica Harness and Jamie Warm.
Hello, Monique Ramirez, District 3. So yesterday I kept hearing that only 10% of phase 1 will make it, and I want to understand why, because I've identified 4 holdups people are experiencing right now that I believe have solutions. Number 1, buildings. Under 10A17, it clearly states that an applicant can be put on a compliance plan and not use the structures until finalized, and that will be a condition of their permit. Yet so many people I talk to say that the county has told them that they need to get a building permit finalized before they will be issued a cannabis permit, and that needs to stop ASAP. Number 2, LSAs. Staff was supposed to bring back language to allow applicants to merely show proof of an LSA application, and then the county would issue a permit, not that the LSA has been finalized. So that needs to happen ASAP for applicants in this situation. Number 3 is the air quality document. I've uncovered that it seems that the county has not been doing this properly since 2017. So all applicants in our program need to be given this document to fill out and have that item checked. And the 4th thing is the SSHR. First of all, the county needs to announce when they started issuing county permits correctly and when the SSHRs have been completed, because otherwise permit holders, the 277, including myself, are of the impression that they have a completed SSHR and will most likely attempt the Appendix G checklist application and submit to the county, only to have their application rejected at their own expense, $90 an hour. So please, can you direct staff to ASAP notify those in this unfortunate situation that their SSHR has not been done correctly and send them the SSHR questionnaire form. Additionally, all of these incorrect SSHRs should be prioritized first before other SSHR reviews are conducted. And also, I think what's interesting about the SSHR thing is under section 10A17.100 number or letter B on page 22, it says a cultivator that cannot demonstrate that there will be a less than significant impact to sensitive species will not be issued a permit. So I asked the question to the county, when can the cultivator demonstrate this? If we can demonstrate that we're creating a less than significant impact, then there is a path forward for people in a precarious SSHR situation. I think there's pathways for us to get everybody licensed that is currently in the queue, so long as they're, communicating with the staff and taking care of the things that they're being requested of. And for people that didn't do a compliance plan correctly, like what mechanism is in place to get that done right? Are we giving people a second chance? Are we completely booting them out of the system? Like, I wish that we could have more clarity around that. Thank you so much for your time. And I really hope we can get this moving forward so that we can say with confidence that we have a lot of people that will be able to get a county issued permit under 10A17. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Williams, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah. I some good points there. I think we should refer it to our cannabis program manager. I think this is operational. And I believe there is a session our cannabis program manager is holding this Thursday from 3:30 to 5. And that may be a good opportunity to answer these questions and others.
Next on the line will be Jessica Harness, followed by Jamie Warm.
Hi, my name is Jessica Harness from 3rd District. And again, I am going to tell you guys I am very disappointed with yesterday's meeting. I feel like our supervisor is not, don't respect planning commissioner's recommendations.
So clarification, this is for public comment on non-agenda items. This is part of a meeting where this item was, we had 150 comments. So do you have comments on something that is not on this agenda? Okay, who's the next speaker?
Jamie Warm.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
and
we
just a
can.
reminder, this is for comments on items that are not on the agenda, which is not the cultivation ordinance and is not the facilities ordinance.
Understood. My comment's a little more general. I just wanted to, I felt it was important, I guess, to take this public moment to discuss a photo that was circulated last night and this morning regarding an uncovered hoop house with Henry's Original. As you guys know, I take the regulation around our company very seriously, as well as the impact we have in our community. And having the lights on during evening hours is not our standard operating procedures. We tarp all automated and manual hoop houses every night. I can guarantee that the site in the picture was closed by 9:30 p.m. And if the lights were on during the dark hours of 8 p.m. and 9:30 p.m., that was an error in our procedures by having lights on prior to tarps being closed. So I've addressed those procedures internally with staff, and I really just wanted to, publicly apologize for any distress that this may have caused. And I can guarantee that it will not happen in the future. So just thank you for bringing this to my attention. I welcome any constructive conversation we can have about improving community impact moving forward. Thank you.
That concludes public comment on this item.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm sorry, I may ask if we can go back to item 3A. Planning and Building had caught that there was a little bit of ambiguity as to whether some of the changes were only applying in paragraph 7 or paragraph 9, and they would just ask if the board could clarify that for the board's action.
Okay, so we'll go back to item 3A.
Thank you. This is Julia Krog. If the board wishes, I'm more than happy to share screen and just show the same changes. As I was creating a clean version of the ordinance after the edits that were just made by the board, I realized there was oversight. We didn't have, consistency between two different sections. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and bring this up to look at. So I'm going to first scroll up and show. This is where the changes were just made by the board regarding direct access from a publicly maintained road. And it refers to section 20.243090D9. And similarly for C, however, we did not formally make that change to D9. So staff has drafted the same language to carry over into this section D9, A and B, to reflect the language that cannabis farm tours with direct access from a publicly maintained road. That same language language and then the clarification as suggested by the board for more than 3 tours per week or more than 25 people per tour requiring that minor use permit. And similarly on B, that cannabis farm tours on parcels without direct access from a publicly maintained road shall require a minor use permit under the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission.
So looking at the board, to me, that looks consistent with the other section. Does the board concur?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for catching that and ensuring consistency. Is there anything else on item 3A?
That was it from staff. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm looking at County Council. We had a motion. We've had concurrence that this is consistent with the motion.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding that the board has indicated that the board's intent is that these changes were incorporated in the prior motion as well. Is that correct?
I saw several hands up and affirmatives. So yes.
Thank you. I think that's sufficient.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, I believe we can conclude this meeting, which took place over 3 days at 11:36.